Hi, welcome back to day 12 of the Light the World, Build the Kingdom challenge, where each day we ask God what is one thing we can do today to light the world, to make the world a better place, and then act upon whatever comes. Today, as I was reading in the New Testament, 3 stories stood out to me, and I'm just going to encapsulate them quickly, and I invite you to go ahead and read them for yourself. The first one is the story about a servant who owes his master a lot of money, 10 talents, and that's a lot of money back then. I don't know the exact conversion rate, but it's an immense amount. And he goes to his master. His master says it's time to pay up. The servant can't do it. He begs for mercy, pleads, help me, give me more time. And the master forgives him and says, okay, I forgive you just all the debt. And so he forgives him this monstrous amount. And then the servant goes out and he finds someone who owes him 100 pence, which is just like, chump change, just nothing in comparison to what he owes. And he demands that he pay everything, and the man can't do it, so he beats him up, turns him over to the officers and says, this man owes me money and he's not paying. Well, the word gets back to his own master, the one he owed the immense amount of money to, and he's very disappointed. He's like, I forgave you all of this, and you're going to go beat this guy over this tiny little amount? And he turns him over to the officers himself until he pays everything that he owes. So there's the one story. The other story that stood out to me was one about a man who owns a large property, and he hires servants to come and work in his fields, and he bargains with the ones who come earlier in the day to give them a penny for the day. That's what they'll get for working for the day. And then he goes out, and at different points in the day he starts bringing more people in, and then at the 11th hour, the very last bit of the day, he brings in some more people and is like, why aren't you working? And they're like, well, nobody's hired us. He's like, well, come on. And they work for 1 hour, and at the end of the day he pays everyone a penny, whether they were there for only an hour or all day long. And the people who were there all day long are miffed. They're like, well, we should have got more for giving these people a penny. And he's like, well, I bargained with you for a penny, and what is it to you if I'm generous to these people who came in at the end of the day? The other story that stood out to me is the story of the woman caught in adultery. People bring her in. She's been caught in adultery, and they bring her to Jesus, and they're ready to stone her, and they're asking Jesus, what should we do? Trying to, trick him, capture him, into saying something he shouldn't say. And Jesus doesn't really say anything. He gets down on the ground, just starts drawing on the ground, and he tells them, he that is without sin among you, cast the first stone. And he draws on the ground, and one by one all the accusers leave, and nobody's left but him and the woman. And he asks the woman, where are your accusers? And she said, they're basically all gone. And he said, neither do I condemn thee, go and sin no more. And as I was thinking of these 3 stories, I thought about the economy of God. In the economy of God, it's not like what we do. We look at someone who's made a mistake in the past. Maybe they've made a big mistake, or they've done some offense, and we, by nature, want to make them the villain from then on. I mean, we see this in the media everywhere. Somebody did something 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They did something 5 years ago, whatever, and they drag this thing out of the closet, and they judge this person. They parade them through the media over this thing that they've done, right? And there's no redeeming. There's no ever saying, I'm sorry, I'm done, I'm sorry I did this, or whatever. I'm not like this anymore, or whatever. Granted, some of them are the same and they haven't changed or whatever, but this inability to forgive people and to realize that we've got our own sins, just like the men with the stones who were going to kill that lady. We've got our own sins. We've got our own debts. We've got our own things where we have done the very same thing that we despise in other people. In some way, we have done it too. And if we really fully examine ourselves, Paul said there is no temptation that's not common to man. All of us have done things that deserve punishment. And if we don't want to have to pay that utmost farthing, maybe we need to be a little more forgiving and more compassionate for those who make mistakes and give them the opportunity to change. Maybe we should look at people a little bit more from the perspective of compassion. If God can do that, if Jesus can do that without making any mistakes ever, I mean, if anyone has a right to stand and judge, it would be the man who paid for my sins and yours and everyone else's. But he's not condemning. He's just inviting you, go and sin no more. And he's willing to pay that servant who shows up and who's willing to turn to him at the very last second, that last hour, as much as he pays the person who lived their whole life trying to follow him. And what do I care if he wants to be that generous? What is it to me that he wants to be generous to someone who comes in later in the game? I know I want forgiveness. So the Light the World thought for today is maybe the thing that would light the world and make the world a better place is a little bit more compassion and a little bit more forgiveness and a little bit more understanding that we all need God's grace. Y'all have a wonderful day. Something to think about. Take care.